Hello, my name is Camille Campos, and I recently just wrapped up on my film opening, Facing Survival. So I just wanted to reflect back on the process. Okay, to start, I'm going to give some background. The film begins with this female character who's placed in this world where she seems to be the final survivor. So she wakes up in this unfamiliar area with a device on her head that is meant to trigger these memories. These memories play an important role in the film as they help her realize ultimately how she has gotten to the point where she's in now. But just in the opening, the memories are flashbacks that are supposed to be scenes shot from her point of view, of her going to the grocery store and seeing people in masks, empty shelves, just to establish that feeling of there's a crisis, this pandemic, people taking precautions. So there's a scene of her hugging her daughter, and then there's another one of her daughter in a mask. And yeah, it just creates that feeling of really needing to understand what has happened. My plan for further on in the film is to give more background on her life, push this emotional factor even more. And not only that, but she realizes that she's actually been put there as an experiment. Honestly, I didn't have much previous knowledge on the sci-fi genre, so in order to get familiar with the genre conventions, I definitely would have to do a lot of research. So that's how I started. And from this, I learned that the genre likes to explore topics like space exploration, extraterrestrial life, time travel, parallel universes, using like advanced technologies and futuristic aspects to do so. So ultimately the genre explores these scientific concepts, and that was something that definitely attracted me to it. I just made this chart after researching on the most prominent sci-fi conventions, the genre conventions that I found. So I'm just going to start from the top left. The use of special effects. This is definitely something I did want to incorporate in my film. But then I realized that with the limited experience I have and the restriction on time, I wouldn't be able to make this happen in the way that I envisioned it. So that's what led me to start brainstorming for another thing that would cause the survival of this one character. I already covered the use of futuristic technologies. Then there's themes. The theme of good versus evil is something that is seen in the sci-fi genre. However, the reason I do think it is important to mention for mine is because the main character, this female character, is supposed to represent the good, and the organization that is controlling her is supposed to be the evil. So then there's characters such as aliens, robots, mutants, heroes. This is definitely what makes sci-fi. It's like all these characters, these character types that defy, what we know. So I didn't include aliens or mutants, but in a way I did try to use the robots and the heroes. The female character represents almost like the hero, and I did want to make her like half human, half robot, but the robot part of her is like the side that's being controlled by this group of people. So there's certain parts, like when she gets up, it's in a very like robotic manner, where she's kind of like stiff, and then the scenes where the memories play, that's also somewhat robotic, but then at the same time there's still this like human side of her. And then the male protagonist, which is something that I'll cover later because it's also very important. Okay, so setting was important for me because it set the time and place for the film. Often in sci-fi films what we see is an alternate universe or an alternate timeline, whereas in my film I did want to use more of like a futuristic concept. Although the pandemic is currently happening, I wanted it to be set later on in the future, and that's why I included the use of the futuristic technology, the device. And then also it's like I wanted to focus on the post-apocalyptic theme. Okay, so going back to the male protagonist, in sci-fi films there's always a lead male character, and just to give an example, like in I Am Legend, the main character is Will Smith. He plays this character who's trying to survive in a post-apocalyptic world. It does share some similarities to my film, but the major difference is in mine, I chose to do a female main character, which was honestly, like, at first I did envision it to be a male character, and I think it's because of how often I've seen that lead male role in sci-fi films, so it was a bit eye-opening for me. And then I thought a female character is just as capable as doing whatever a male character would do. So that's why I made that choice, and I do believe that females are underrepresented in sci-fi, in the sci-fi genre. So that's something I did want to include, and not only that, but she's also Hispanic, and it's just, it works for representation. And just to add to that, that change in using a female rather than a male to play this part didn't affect how my target audience would view it. So there was really no downside to making this change. If anything, it was just a benefit. And now, just to cover on target audience, for sci-fi films, it's mainly males ranging from the age of 18 to 29 years old, typically I'd say in the middle class, based upon my research. There are changes in the genre happening now in today's society, and I've given some examples in previous blog posts of shows or even movies that are starring females as the lead role. Overall, I just believe that no matter the actor, whether it be male or female, the genre just works for the target audience because it explores these concepts that defy science. Then it was time to consider the distribution of the film. Now, I think it's really important to take into consideration the fact that I'm still an amateur filmmaker. I definitely had to keep that in mind when thinking, how can I get the film out there? So the first thing that came to mind was local film festivals in my area, like the Miami, South Florida area. And it's just a way to get your name out there, bring awareness to the film. And another idea that I also had was conventions. Now, for sci-fi, there are hundreds of conventions, not just in South Florida, but around the US, where these people who have such large interest in sci-fi, science fiction comics, films, everything really. So that would be just a great place to bring the film and, you know, really distribute it to my target audience, because that's just exactly where they'll be. Alright, so the whole process started when my media teacher assigned us this project. Right away, I was super excited to do it. I had an idea. So I got home, I wrote down the idea, I wrote down like a description of it as well. I just remember going straight to Google Docs and just writing out a list of things that I had to do. That was pretty much my planning process, so then I had to start the research. I think my main form of research was definitely watching sci-fi movies. So I watched Children of Men, The Matrix, I Am Legend. I watched different sci-fi films, and what I found from each of the films is that although they did have some similarities, there was always something unique that made the film special, and I knew that I would have to have like that same thing. Okay, and then of course I conducted further research online, and I think the second most important way that I began to research was just looking up the most popular sci-fi movies and what was special about them. So I posted a blog where I looked at several sci-fi movies and I just analyzed each of them. And then the filming process began, which I think this is the part where I struggled the most, but it was my favorite part. I had to ask Silvana to be my actress, and at first I was a bit nervous to do this, as like it's a big favor to ask for, but she was super excited to do it. This is, I think, the part where I learned the most about myself and filmmaking as well, because I had to become the director. I had to tell her everything that she had to do and ask for her to do it a certain way in order to really create that feel that I was going for. I do want to say that when I was filming, I pretty much just used my camera and then a tripod for some shots. But other than that, no mic, there wasn't much hardware that was needed. So once I finished filming, all I had left to do was basically just bring it all together. And to edit all the footage, I used an online editing platform known as WeVideo. After that, I just had to add the little details. One of the most important ones is sound. I use a website named Free Sound, which just has a library of sounds where you can look up pretty much anything. I looked up eerie, sci-fi, dramatic, ominous, all these keywords that just bring you a list of sounds, and then I went through them for quite some time. And then I just selected the ones that I thought would fit perfectly. And after that, I just had to do the animation of the SF films at the beginning, which I used PowerPoint for, and for the credits, and then for the title. So overall, creating the opening was an amazing experience, and the hard work definitely led me to be proud of the finished product. I think I learned both about filmmaking and about myself. I realized how much work really goes into creating an opening, which is it's 2 minutes, but it took me, like weeks. But in the end, I'm so grateful for being able to complete this project, and I would love to do it again.